Spanish by choosing the world icon at the bottom of the page. You can choose to mute the original audio or keep it open. And we will start it right after we make this message. Tenemos servicios de interpretación simultánea. Puedes seleccionar el mapa mundo en la parte inferior de la página y seleccionar el idioma español para recibir servicios de interpretación simultánea. También cualquier comentario que necesites realizar va a ser interpretado de vuelta al inglés. For English speakers, you can also get connected to the English interpretation so that if someone were to do a Spanish comment during the meeting, you could hear the interpretation live in the simultaneous channel for English. I think that concludes. Oh, and you have Clara Garzón and Marcy Valdivieso as your interpreters tonight.
Hi, everyone. So good to see many of you. And, we've met many of you last month in September, but we just want to welcome you to the second East Oakland Community Steering Committee. And thank you for being here tonight with us. And so I know you've met a lot of people in the last meeting, and we'll introduce myself. My name is Lujane Al-Saleh, and I'm the East Oakland Clean Air Project Coordinator with CBE, or Communities for a Better Environment. And when you have a moment, if you could sign into this Google form that we're going to paste into the chat, just so that way we can see everyone who's a part of the steering committee is here. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Margaretta Lynn of Just Cities.
Great. Thank you so much, Lou Jane. And it's so wonderful to see everyone again. The first meeting was so inspiring to hear the stories of the steering committee members, of your love of East Oakland and of your love of your neighbors and all the service that you've been doing, from opening up your homes as a safe house for community youth to your years of fighting for clean air, so that people can just have the human right to breathe. And so grateful that you are willing to contribute your amazing energy and heart and brilliance to this new endeavor. Next. So we have, if we could go to the prior slide with the agenda. Great, thank you, Gabby. So here's what we're proposing for tonight's agenda. First, some notes as part of our welcome, and then some time for CBE and BACMET staff to ground us in some very important information about this planning process we're embarking on together. After that, to move into hearing from the steering committee members on what's important to you to create a safe space where you feel respected and heard, and that you have the ability to also hear and respect other members of the steering committee. And so that'll be a small group conversation. We will then move into a 5-minute break, because Zoom takes a lot out of us, right? And it's nighttime. And then we'll come back to talk about the co-chairs for this effort. And this is so important for governance, for community governance for this process. So we'll be having conversations about the co-chairs in both small group and then come back in large group. And then if there's time to just make sure everyone is good with the proposal for both the nominations and the voting. And then some next steps remarks. I do want to say that this is your meeting. And so if there's anything that you don't understand or need more time to discuss, let us know. And we need to go at the speed of trust, right? And the speed of comfort of the steering committee members. Next. So while we're waiting to hear from the steering committee members about what's important to you to create a safe space for conversation, we have some recommendations for how we operate with one another this evening. First, that we want to be able to hear everyone. So if we can use our show of hands on the Zoom hand or your physical hand, so that you can be called on by the facilitator. Second, let's have grace for ourselves and one another. Many of us are having some hard times right now, and we don't know that if we don't know each other. So let's give each other the benefit of the doubt when we might feel some discomfort based on what someone says, right? And let's give them the opportunity to clarify themselves. This is a long meeting, 2 hours on Zoom. So please take good care of yourself, stretch, drink water, and breathe. Let's use the Zoom features to build community. So please, we encourage you to use the chat feature and the reaction emojis to encourage one another. And if you have any questions at all throughout the meeting, please use the Zoom chat. CBE and BACMed staff members will be on tap to respond to your questions. Next. And I'm going to tag team Diana Benitez to lead us in some community building.
Hello, everyone. I'm Diana Benitez with Just Cities, and we wanted to take part in a little bit of community building with you all. And so this is for all of us to be able to take part in, but our CSC members are the ones that are going to be responding aloud, and then everybody else can respond in the chat so we can all get to know each other. And so we want to hear from CSC members aloud, your name, your pronouns, and one word on a community agreement that we need for the CSC. And for context, a community agreement can be things like what Margareta just discussed earlier, like one voice, one mic. It can also range for having a decision-making process. And so it can range. And so we've randomly generated a list of all of our CSC members so we can get an order going like we did for the previous meeting in September. And so Jasmine, if you could get us started, followed by Colleen and Sochi.
Hi, I'm Jasmine, and my pronouns are she, her, ella. Sorry, I kind of forget what was on the community agreement, but I saw something about one mic, which I think is really useful, especially since we're such a large group.
So Gabby, we can pause sharing so we can see each other better here. Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. And Colleen, you can go next.
Good evening, everyone. Colleen Liang, she, her, and just a couple of words that I'd like to put out there was collaborative and also commitment. Thank you.
And Sochil? You should be able to unmute yourself. All right, we'll come back to you. Kalila?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, but we have, there you go. Go for it. Kalila, I
Hi,
think,
sorry. Yeah,
sorry, just a little tech troubleshooting. It sounds like you have two things on at the same time. If you can lower the volume of either your computer or your phone, then we won't get that reverb.
sorry. I'm so
No
sorry.
worries.
My
We got
computer
it.
keeps crashing, so I tried it on my phone and then I just couldn't figure it out. But I'm here. So Kalila Haynes, she, her. My video is off right now. Hopefully that will help the computer out. But some words, I guess, on just I guess excitement, learning. I'm not sure if those are appropriate, but
Thank you. Can we have Esther go next, followed by Ayana?
Hello, everyone. Can you repeat what the prompt is?
Yes, one word that comes to mind for you for community agreements that you think the CSC should have.
Yeah, my name is Esther Goldsby. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. I think we should have don't yuck my yum, meaning suggestions are good and that you should not disrespect or disagree or just any of that and just like open-minded thoughtfulness. Yep, that's it.
Thank you. Ayana, followed by Danny.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ayana Johnson. My pronouns are she and her. I think one word that we should use with CSC would be inclusivity, because I believe that everybody's opinion actually matters. You never know the perspective they're speaking from. So everybody and their ideas and how they see the world should be accepted. So.
Looks like
Were
Danny.
you able to hear that?
Yes, we did. Thank you so much.
No
Danny
worries.
Scott isn't here. And Jiri, would you like to go next?
Hi, it's Jerry. The N is silent. Pronouns she, her. I just think mutual respect, and I think everything else has been said actually that I would agree with. So I'll leave it at mutual respect.
Thank you. Can Andrea go next, followed by Susan?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Andrea Pineda. I go by she, her pronouns. And I think an important community agreement to have is communication, just like communicating what our situations are, like just letting people know what's going on. And that way, you know, less mistakes can happen and stuff like misunderstandings. Thank you.
Susan?
Okay. Susan Goolsby, she, her, and I think a big part of this is East Oakland's community commitment to clean air, health, with back, BACMED's commitment to what we say.
Thank you, Susan. I just put into the chat, Jamaica can go next, followed by Miss Cecilia, then Andrea, then Guadalupe, and then Marina.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jamaica. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I guess I would say just to be curious, curious to research, curious to ask questions, but yeah, just to be curious so that we can always be in a process of learning. Thank you.
I'm Miss Cecilia.
Hello, Miss Cecilia. Would you like to share one word that comes to mind that you would like as a community agreement with this CSC?
Yes, I would like to say that we shouldn't judge one another. We should have an open mind and try to, you know.
Thank you, Miss Cecilia. Andrea, would you like to go next?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. My name's Andrea Black. And I think my one word for the community agreement is accountability.
Thank you. Guadalupe, can you go next? Guadalupe, you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, got it. If you can type it into the chat. Marina, would you like to go next?
Sí, pues yo voy a opinar, ¿verdad? Que lo primerito que debemos tener es el respeto, ¿verdad? Tener una buena comunicación entre nosotros y también comprometernos a hacer nuestro trabajo. Gracias.
Thank you. Shamar, can you go next? Followed by Charles and then Gabrielle.
Hey, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Cool. Hey, everybody. This is Shamar Tooth. You can just call me Shamar. Yeah, as far as the ground rule, I would say just kind of like a variation of the old step up, step back, as far as centering East Oakland voices, East Oakland perspectives, and the interests of just regular East Oakland residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles.
Hello, everybody. My name is Charles Reed. I go by Charles. And I would love for us to be bold in recognizing that AB 617 is a living document. So let's be bold together in our investigation of solutions.
Thank you. Gabrielle?
Yeah, my name is Gabrielle Sloan Law. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. And if I could pick a word, I like bold, the last person, but I was gonna say accountable and ambitious. You know.
Okay, now can we have Cynthia go next, followed by Jamie, Marika, and Michaela?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Cynthia Gutierrez. My pronouns are she, her, and ella, and my word is clarity. There are so many of us East Oakland residents that want to produce real change in our community, and we need clarity from the folks who are putting this together around clear next steps, what we can do to step up, and hopefully not get stuck in long-winded 2-hour meetings and like really produce some change. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie, she, her pronouns, and I would say I would double down on curiosity and compassion.
America, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So my name is Marika, like Eureka with the M in the front, Marika. And I agree with I believe it was Cynthia that's mentioned something about 2-hour meetings. So my word is concise, to keep your input concise and on topic. I know some people have a tendency to go off on a tangent and then the meeting feels like it can last forever. So my word is concise.
Thank you. Michaela?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Michaela Patton. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of New Voices Are Rising. And we have some New Voices youth here, so really exciting. I would just say like lived experiences. We all know our communities the best, even if we don't, know like the science or the data behind it. But we know the impacts and how it makes us feel and how it's been affecting our community. So just trusting in that and like trusting our gut.
Thank you. Carol Core?
Hi, good evening. My name is Carol Core. I'm a resident in East Oakland, and my pronouns are she and her. My word would be inclusive empowerment. I think it's important that we all have the ability to contribute, and what we say gets heard and actually can be part of the solution. Thank you.
And William?
Good evening. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, great. William
Safe.
Trottinger. You can just call me Bill. My word is patience.
Thank you. And Tram?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tram Nguyen, pronouns she, her. I'm with Alameda County Public Health Department, and I'm here on behalf of Kimmy Watkins Tart, our director, who's on the steering committee. And I would say my word is transparent.
Thank you. And then Sochi, would you like to say your information aloud? Okay, and then is Erica on the call? Okay, I think we went through all of everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I'll pass it back on to Margareta.
Great, thank you so much, Gianna. I see that Miss Margaret has had her hand up. Miss Margaret, is there something you want to say?
Ms. Margaret Gordon with the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, one of the first communities in Northern California for the West Oakland Environmental Indicators, who had the first action plan under the AB 617. My words to the steering committee members is perform in a place of longevity. There's nothing short order, short term about this process. And how do you produce fairness for environmental justice, health, equity, and reparations in this process? Also, not to be just empowered, but having the power of decision making. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your wisdom, Miss Margaret. And I do want to acknowledge that Gabrielle asked some very profound and important questions in chat. And we hope that your questions get answered in the following presentation that CBE and BACMed are about to provide. However, if they don't fully address your questions, we will come back to them. All right, because these are foundational questions around what is the role of the steering committee fundamentally? How much power does the steering committee have and over what, right? And it's important to understand what legal authority BACMed has, what is held by the city of Oakland, what is held by Alameda County, the state, and feds. And we're not going to be able to get through all that information tonight, but at least to begin the conversation, so you all have informed choice about spending time in this process with BACMed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lou Jane and Allison. And if Gabby can bring back up the screen slides, thank you.
Thank you so much, Margareta. Really appreciate it, and really great to hear all of what you all want to see in this process. And we know that there are a lot of questions around AB 617. And this presentation will delve deeper into the Community Emissions Reduction Plan, or SERP process. So when I refer to the SERP, I'm referring to this plan. And I'll be presenting with Allison Kirk of the Planning District of the Air District. And as we're going through this presentation, please feel free to ask questions. And I can't see you all. I'm in like my own slides, so someone will let me know if anyone has a question, and then we'll be able to answer those. And then if we could move to the next slide. Thank you. So I first wanted to start off with a brief history and overview of AB 617. And so when AB 617 was first passed in 2017, it was passed as a companion bill to California's cap and trade program. And the main purpose of AB 617 is to reduce emissions beyond what is required by existing law. But as many of you know, many environmental justice communities and organizations such as CBE have objected to cap and trade because it depends on continuing greenhouse gas emissions. And this is through a market-based trading market. And so the money that's generated from this is what funds climate programs like AB 617. So just something that we wanted to shed light on as we move through this process. And while cap and trade aims to reduce overall pollution, it continues to impact frontline communities across the state because polluting industries are able to purchase permits, essentially, which in other words, it's buying the right to pollute. And so, along with this flawed history, this process is not without challenges. And as you can see in the image of the map to the right, there's an allocated number of communities that are selected to participate in the 617 process. And since there's limited funding, many communities that are impacted by pollution are often left out of the process and are often selected if they have a lot of strong organizing around environmental justice issues. And so communities that may not have that history or are under-resourced, they can get left out of the AB 617 process. And so we really want to make sure that we address these challenges. And finally, while AB 617 aims to reduce emissions, many SERPs lack specific mechanisms to enforce emissions reductions. So this is another challenge that we wanted to highlight and bring up, and just share as we're starting to delve deeper into what the SERP entails, and like what is AB 617. So I wanted to pause and just see if there are any questions before I advance to the next slide. Yes, thanks, Michaela, and definitely we'll share a presentation, a copy of it that you can also view afterwards, as well as a recording of this presentation. And then I see that Gabrielle, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, my question is, if most SERPs lack mechanisms, and you also said many, the implication is that some SERPs don't lack mechanisms. And I'm wondering if they lack mechanisms due to the way the SERP was developed. Does that mean we can take that and use it to develop a SERP that is actionable? Or is it just because of outside forces?
That's a really great question. And it's kind of both. So for example, some SERPs might not have specific, and feel free to, I see Ms. Margaret that you have your hand raised, they might not have specific strategies around actual emissions reductions. And so sometimes then that the emissions reductions doesn't actually happen because there isn't really specific criteria or strategies to put that into place. And then in some cases, it might be because of outside external factors. So it really depends. And so in the next slide, I'm going to be talking about how we were able to apply lessons that we've learned to really develop a SERP that is actionable and enforceable, and that we're able to really reduce emissions. And I want to make sure if that answers your question as well, Gabrielle. Okay. Great, awesome. And then I see Miss Margaret, you have your hand raised.
Okay, but I think that when you say enforceable, it all depends on who you're talking about doing enforceable. If you're talking about CARB doing the enforceable, California EPA doing the enforceable, who are you talking about being part of the enforceable? That is a part of the orientation and education that each SERP has to have based on their conditions. Who has what authority? Who has what authority for enforceability? And so let's be clear. It depends on who you are targeting for having enforceability. If you don't have a target and you're looking at everybody, you're not going to have enforceability, but you got to narrow it down to who has what authority. And part of the role of the community partner is to always identify enforceability, proximity, land use, and exposure, and risk, and who has that authority. So right now, one of the things that y'all, for East Oakland, y'all need to understand who is that agency that you want to fulfill those obligations. So yes, but if you don't target, strategize, and understanding that, you're gonna be all over the place. So you got to narrow down your focus based on the conditions that you see that impact or make your community vulnerable. Because one size does not fit all, but you got to have to know the who and the what. So I just want, that's what, when you come down to enforcement, you got to know the who and the what.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much, Miss Margaret. Definitely.
Part of your mechanics. So part of the lack of mechanics is the lack of the mechanics. If the community don't know, have that investigation, have that evidence, or have that bandwidth all to circumvent themselves to be clear on that who is participating in giving them lack of the mechanics, that's when stuff hit the fan.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Miss Margaret. And we'll be talking more about that, the roles, understanding exactly the roles and responsibilities of all the agencies that are involved. But that's crucial too. And it's really also context and place-based, right? So what happens in the SERP in East Oakland is going to be different than, say, the SERP in South Central Fresno. We'll be talking more about that. And then I also see that, Marina, you also had your hand raised as well.
Sí, aquí estoy, ¿verdad? Yo también quisiera mencionar eso, ¿verdad? Que, que tenemos que enfocarlos, ¿verdad? Enfocarnos, ¿verdad? Y también enfocarnos en el área como en el este de Oakland, ¿verdad? Que son los lugares más contaminados que tenemos en nuestra bahía, ¿verdad? Con respecto a lo que la señora dijo, ¿verdad? ¿Quién va a ser la agencia de tener estas reglas y las responsabilidades, verdad? ¿Cómo vamos a trabajar juntos? Sí, esa era mi pregunta. ¿Cómo vamos a trabajar juntos? ¿Quiénes son los responsables?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Marina. And that definitely touches on previous questions too that others have raised about, you know, why is a mechanism, why does it not work? And so I'm going to be going over the roles and responsibilities of you all as steering committee members, of the co-leads, which are CBE and the Air District. We're going to be talking about CARB, the California Air Resources Board, other agencies that are involved in this process, like the Alameda County Public Health Department. And so we each play a unique and specific role. And it's really crucial to, as Miss Margaret said, to understand that role and to make sure that we're collaborating with each other and also holding each other accountable as we develop the SERP. So that's a really great question that is really important as we move through this process, and we're going to be covering in this presentation. And I see a question from Cynthia that the map is showing West Oakland. And I apologize, this map is older. The next slide I'm going to shift to will have East Oakland on it. So this is just a map from a few years ago that shows the communities that were selected. So thank you all for those questions. And I'll go on and move to the next slide. Thank you. So, you know, although this process is really challenging and the history of AB 617 is flawed, there are also so many communities that we can collaborate with and learn from, who've gone through this process and have been able to achieve emissions reductions in their communities. And as an example, we've been able at CBE to meet with Miss Margaret and WOAP, the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, and have learned invaluable lessons, such as the importance of early interagency collaboration. So that speaks to making sure that we're coordinating across agencies and understand what each of our roles and responsibilities are. And we've also learned from others that it is crucial to incorporate specific enforceable emissions reductions that are both quantifiable, so we're able to quantify them and have specific numbers, and that they're also permanent. So these are not short-term emissions reductions, that we're able to reduce emissions over, you know, a long period of time, and that they're permanent. And another key area of concern too is to identify mobile sources of pollution. So when we think of, usually at least when I think of pollution, I think of a factory or a stagnant source of pollution. And so in this case, thinking about trucks, thinking about ships, sources of pollution that move. So wanting to make sure that we're identifying that if that is a concern for East Oakland. And then also reviewing current rules and regulations to strengthen, expand, or adopt health protective measures. So also focusing not just on emissions reductions, but community health, and making sure that we're actually reducing exposure and protecting people. And then finally, making sure that we're advancing language access, that all of our meetings are interpreted if needed, and that we have really clear schedule for meetings and decision making. So these are just some of the lessons that we've learned and wanted to also highlight as we move forward. And I just wanted to pause and see before passing to Allison if anyone has any questions. Okay, great. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to Allison.
Next slide, Gabby.
Thank you. Thank you, Lou Jane. It took me a while to be able to unmute myself. Sorry for that pause there. So my name is Allison Kirk, and I'm an assistant planning manager at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And I'd like to look at two examples in the Bay Area of SERPs. And the first one we're going to look at is the West Oakland Community Action Plan. To create this SERP, the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project partnered with the Air District to create this SERP and convene a steering committee, a community-based steering committee. Now, West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, also I'm going to refer to them as WOIP, have deep roots in West Oakland and have been advocating for environmental justice for about the last 2 decades. So with their deep roots in the community, WOIP was able to bring forth a steering committee that included residents, community activists, workers, business owners, a representative from the trucking industry, in addition to representatives from local government agencies that work in the community, such as City of Oakland, the Port of Oakland, Alameda Public Health, and also state agencies that focus on public health. So by bringing this group together, and there were 24 community steering committee members, the steering committee and engaged community members could bring their wisdom and their experience to the table. And coupled with the technical analysis that the Bay Area Air Quality Management District brought, we were able to really identify the most problematic and largest pollution sources in West Oakland. And then the steering committee was able to focus on developing strategies to address these sources of emissions. So the SERP has strategies that focus on reducing emissions from sources and also reducing exposure to emissions as well. So for example, there's many measures in the strategy that focus on cleaning, providing incentives for cleaner engines in the community. For example, to purchase cleaner trucks and equipment at the Port of Oakland. But also, in addition, there are measures that focus on reducing exposure to emissions, for example, through air filtration programs, and also making changes to land use zoning so that there's bigger buffers between where people live and work and play compared to where the industrial sources are. So this SERP was adopted in 2019, and in 2021, we took a look at the amount of incentives we were able to spend in the community, and these funds came from state sources and regional sources. And we were able to determine that we made a very significant impact in terms of reducing emissions in the community of West Oakland. For example, reducing annual tons of diesel particulate matter, 14 annual tons, and 12.5 tons per year of fine particulate matter, and almost 10,000 annual tons of cancer risk weighted toxics. So this gives you an idea of both the approach that was taken in West Oakland, how the steering committee was able to build on their experience and wisdom to create strategies to address the sources, and how the steering committee worked with the Air District to really identify those sources and come up with successful ways to address them. And I see that Miss Margaret's hand is up, and I invite her to add her thoughts and correct me if I made any mistakes.
Thank you, Allison. But I got something that a good tidbit to add to the body. West Oakland Environmental Indicators had developed a process going back almost 17 years, where we sit down and partner on projects and programs with Bay Area Air Quality. All right. So we have had the relationships and the trust among the staff, executive director and executive staff and the line staff on a lot of different things that we approach as West Oakland around the Port of Oakland and the city of Oakland. So that gave us a not a heads up, but it gave us a practice. They gave us a practice how we would engage with each other. And we based that on a partnering agreement. So like the truck route study that we did, counting trucks on the street, being engaged with the maritime air quality improvement for the Port of Oakland, the Army base project, the Howard Terminal project. So they have always been part of our technical, as West Oakland Bar Indicators has been part of our technical assistance in writing letters to those particular things. Also, when we have a problem about the port extending itself to bring in a new terminal that was not really up to par to deal with emission reductions, they did a support level. So that was, I just want to be adding on to that. There have been some differences, but there's also been some welcoming processes that we have grown together to build trust and relationships. Because we did a lot, we have done work together.
Great, thank you, Miss Margaret. I think that clarity and the concrete information really helps to answer important questions that steering committee members have. And just given our time, I'm recommending Allison and Lou Jane that we come back to the Richmond example for a future meeting. And if we could quickly go over the SERP milestones in a very high-level summary form, spend a little more time on slide 3 regarding the East Oakland timeline, and then more time on slide 14 around the different agency roles, because that answers folks' questions, and then hold the organizational charts for a future meeting.
Sounds great. Yeah, thank you, Margareta. So I'm gonna start off with some of the key milestones of the SERP process is, and we're here now. We have the community steering committee, and that's such a crucial component of this process. And later this evening, we'll be talking about the co-chairs who will be supporting with leading steering meetings, meeting with the Air District and CBE. And then from there, we'll be collectively building a vision together, and that will include values for the SERP and the CSC. We'll be also talking about community agreements in the next presentation. And then the last three components are a community profile of East Oakland, where we work with the Air District in conducting a technical assessment and understanding, having a better understanding of the sources of pollution and emissions and impacts on community. And from there, that will go into developing our strategy, which includes a strategy-focused roadmap that identifies key issues and pollution sources and the goals and targets that we have for the plan, and what emissions reductions we want to see. And then finally, we have implementation and enforcement of the plan. And so as we draft and finalize the SERP, we also will be facilitating coordination among all the agencies that are involved in this process. And if you'd please go to the next slide. I'm going to go over, this is a rough proposed SERP timeline for East Oakland. And we really want to make sure that we're not rushing this process, but we're also achieving milestones, and that forming the steering committee was a really huge step in this process. And so as we go into this winter, we're going to be crafting our vision and our principles and the community boundary. And then in the spring of next year, we'll start to, we'll be working on the community profile and the technical assessment and gathering all of the air pollution data and information that we need to start to plan our goals and our targets in the summer of 2023. And then next year in the fall, we'll be writing additional plan elements and then continuing to draft the plan going into the winter of 2024. And then as we continue to draft that and hold these meetings, we're hoping that we can have our draft plan in spring 2024, and that in the summer of 2024, we can approve the plan. And so I just wanted to also emphasize that this is a really iterative process, and that some things might take longer and some things might actually take not as long as we anticipated. And so I just want to make sure that if there are any questions, I can take a pause here and see if there's anyone that has any questions. And I see that Cynthia shared, we can definitely show these milestones in future meetings too, and check out where we are in the process. And I see Laura has your hand up.
I promise I've done this before. I unmute myself. Good afternoon, Laura Ariola from the Port of Oakland. I served as the port representative for the West Oakland Steering Committee. By way of introduction, this is great information. And of course, I'm looking at all of this upon reflection of the process in West Oakland, and it answers a whole lot of questions that I had going into this. But my question is, so great work, everyone. The timeline around summer 2024 for CSC approves final plan. I'm sorry, I don't know who CSC is, and is it going to the board of the Air District for approval around this timeline?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that question. So the CSC is the Community Steering Committee, and so they'll be approving the final plan in the summer, and then it will go to the Air Districts to adopt the plan. Yeah, so sorry for not clarifying the acronyms for that. So that's our goal, is to have that ready by summer 2024 and approved. Awesome. Any other questions at all? Great. So I'll move on to the next slide before we go into community agreements. And so as I discussed in the previous slide, there are many stakeholders that are a part of this process. And so I'm just going to go through the roles and responsibilities for each stakeholder and agency. And so the community steering committee is setting the vision and the guiding values and overseeing the process to develop the SERP. And then we have the co-chairs of the steering committee. And so they'll be providing leadership to the steering committee and helping to plan agendas and facilitating any breakout or ad hoc discussions outside of our normal meeting times. And then community members of East Oakland. So even if, the community member is not necessarily a steering committee member, it's crucial that these meetings are public and they can attend and also share their lived experiences and input and recommendations as well. And then we have the co-leads. So Communities for a Better Environment, CBE, we are co-leads with the Air District, and we're helping with technical analyses, data and research, and Just Cities is providing the administrative support too. And here too, if any conflict arises too, to support with mediation. And then finally, there are other, agencies as well involved in this process, but local government is also, it plays an important role in this process. And so they're bringing the local tools and authority. We have the City of Oakland and also Alameda County that contribute health data and expertise to us. And then the California Air Resources Board. So they're providing technical support and support with rulemaking and enforcement and statewide activities in California. So before we move on to the next presentation, I'll just pause again to see if there are any questions about this. Great. Well, thank you all so much. And we'll definitely talk more about the organizational structure of CBE and the Air District and CARB in the next session, and make sure that we answer all of those questions about roles and responsibilities.
Actually, Lou Jane, I see Marina's hand up.
Oh, sorry about that.
Stay on.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Whenever you're ready, Marina.
Sí, yo tengo una pregunta, ¿verdad? Pues es mi primera vez, ¿verdad? Que estoy aquí en esta reunión, ¿verdad? Grande. Y ahorita estoy entendiendo, ¿verdad? Que estoy viendo que hay diferentes roles para las personas que quieran participar. Me gustaría tener todos estos documentos, ¿verdad? Traducidos en el español, para yo así enfocarme qué es lo que quieren decir, sí, cada uno.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Marina. And we'll make sure that all of these materials are translated into Spanish, because I know it's a lot of information, and it can take a while to like absorb all of it. There's a lot going on.
Sí,
and so we'll make
gracias.
sure. Yeah, of course.
So thank you for that important advocacy, Marina, but my understanding is the PowerPoint has been translated. And if so, maybe someone can just email that out to the steering committee members right now.
I can do that. We shared them yesterday with everyone with the invitation. So we'll send that over again right now.
Great, thank you. And I see
Gracias.
Laura had her hand up earlier.
Yeah, Laura, if you'd like to share. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I was just unmuting myself again. Sorry. This is really good information. Again, great work, everyone, for providing such a clear roadmap to this process, which also the beauty of providing such clarity is also brings up a lot of questions, right? And so one of the questions I have is, I see CARB under roles and responsibilities as having, as we all know, the role of setting legislation statewide for air quality improvement projects. Does the Air District have any, what about the Air District in this role? Is there anything locally that would be categorized under this, that would be put into this category?
Yeah, so in this case, are you, is this in regards to like enforcement and
rulemaking
and rulemaking? Yeah, definitely. And also Air District staff too, feel free to jump in, but the Air District does have enforcement power and is able to depend, not of course not with everything. Like we'll talk more about this in upcoming meetings, but with mobile sources, they're not really able to enforce rules around mobile sources, whereas the CARB is able to. So there's different roles around enforcement that the Air District has, but they do play that role as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. And any other questions at all before we move to community agreements?
Thank you, Lou, Jane, and everyone. Can we pause the screen sharing? So it is 7:05 and we've been on Zoom together for a little over an hour. I propose that we take a 3-minute break, return, and then go into small group breakout to give everyone a chance to get to know each other a little better and talk about maybe like 3 top agreements that are important to you all. Anna, I'm sorry, Anna, did you have your hand up? Oh, I think she's just scratching her nose. Okay. So why don't we, and I'm sorry, so let's take, how does that sound? A 5-minute break right now and come back at 7:10. And maybe the facilitators can stay on and just so we can do some timing revision. Sorry to out you, Anna, but I thought I saw your hand up.
No, I was trying to fix my my camera was out of focus, and then yeah, I had an itchy eye. Sorry.
Okay, so I think we want to begin the co-chair discussions by 7:20. So when people come back at 7:10, even if it's like a 5-minute, let's say 7-minute conversation in small group breakout, just to break up this more passive activity might be nice, and and it helps people get talking before then talking about something a little more complex, which is the co-chairs. Does that work for everyone? And then we'll do some staff acknowledgement, Anna, right after break. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So how does that sound as a plan? So we'll still do small group, but for a much shorter time, but just to get people more actively engaged with one another.
So how long, so when will we, what time will we come out?
will
I
come
think
out
that
by
sounds
7:20.
fine. I just want to know,
Yeah.
like, keep an eye on the clock.
Yeah, so we'll come out by 7:20.
Okay.
So who is in charge of putting people in and bringing people back out?
Me.
Gabby. So Gabby, you'll stay in the main room with me?
Yes, and whomever needs Spanish translation.
Okay. Lisa?
I was just raising my hand because I'll be taking notes for Gabby.
Okay. All right. Awesome. I'm gonna take a very short break.
Okay, me too. Follow her lead.
I'm just assigning these randomly, or actually, I need to know who needs the Spanish translation. Okay. I'll just have to do it after we get those hands up, so it's gonna take a while. Or
Gabby,
gonna take a bit.
What I would recommend is right now you just start randomly assigning. We know that Marina needs to be in
okay.
the room because she needs the Spanish interpretation.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
beyond that, if anybody else raises their hand, you can just do like simple
Yeah.
switcheroo.
Okay.
So yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Random.
Okay, folks, it is 7:10 and we are back online. And we have some special guests from BACMed with us. Anna, would you like to introduce your colleagues?
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody and steering committee members. I'm Anna Lee. I'm one of the managers with the Air District. I just want to give a quick shout out to our interim air pollution control officer, Sharon Landers, who is here. Sharon is waving her hand. And there are also several other staff. It's hard to capture all of them, but I hope staff, you could add Air District to your name, how you sign your name, so people can see. And folks are here because this is really important to them on a values standpoint, and also for the work that we're doing. And they just want to be supportive to the steering committee. So more to come on introductions from folks in the future. I just want to thank them all for coming and being a resource to the steering committee. And you'll probably get to hear from them in the breakouts. Thank you, Margareta. Back to you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Sharon, and other colleagues for being with us on an evening. And it is your showing up, your presence demonstrates your commitment in volumes, right? So we're going to go into breakout rooms in order for people to start talking with one another instead of us talking at you. Here's the, it's hard on Zoom, but we're really trying to create a space where steering committee members are creating with one another, right? And so it's important to take the time for these small group breakouts. So we have, I think all the Spanish speakers will be staying in the main room with the translators, and then other folks will be randomly assigned in breakout rooms. And we will return by 7:20. So about a 7-minute conversation in small group. And basically, let's hear from you in a in a more detailed way about what's important to you to feel like this is your space, right? So Gabby, please, oh, go ahead, Deanna.
Just wanted to make sure, we know that Marina needs to stay in the main room, but just wanted to double check, is there anybody else that needs Spanish interpretation that would like to stay in the main room? If you do, please raise your hand.
Okay, so Gabby, thank you. Let's send us off into Zoom land.
Great, you should all be getting a notification to change. If feel free to click on the more dots and breakout rooms if it didn't pop up immediately, and it should send you. And there should be some folks that we can have a conversation with here in the main room. Great. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, great. So I think this is gonna be our group. Hi, everybody. My name is Gabby, just to, make sure we know who we are. My name is Gabby. I'm a new project manager at Just Cities, and it's my first meeting with you all. So I'm so excited to get to know you and learn more about you and get this community agreement process going. So I would love to hear from folks what community agreements or decision making, what you think should look like, and any ideas that maybe community agreements you've seen in other places, or anything that you think is really important in making decisions as a community. So maybe we'll raise hands if anybody wants to speak. Okay.
I'm sorry, I was raising my hand, but can you repeat what did you inquire about?
Of course, we are inquiring about what you would want the community agreements to be and what you'd like the decision-making process to be like in this group. So just starting a conversation with that. Marika, you would like to get us started?
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so my name is Marika, and this is kind of what I had said earlier. I like a community agreement of be concise, stay on topic, and keep comments to like 2 or 3 minutes, so you don't have one person going on and on for like 20 minutes on a tangent. I think that is super important.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I agree. And I think, just hearing everybody out and, like I said earlier, catching their perspective on, everybody has their own life path and their own understanding of things. So just, if you don't, just providing clarity. So I think that would be good as well.
Okay, so I'm hearing clarity and concise. Cynthia?
Yeah, I have my own to add, but I wanted to add to the first person, America, what you were saying. I would really like to encourage the facilitators of this meeting, if you see someone going past the limits that we have set as a group, for you to call people in. I feel like the first meeting, all of us didn't know each other and there was just tangents left and right. And I was confused. I'm like, what's the agenda? I didn't realize this was open to the public. Like there was so much confusion and like chaos, just to be honest. And I feel like you as facilitators need to like step it up and make sure that you hold us accountable to the agreements that we set. So thank you, Marika, for really sharing that. The second one I wanted to say was be aware of intent and impact. I think often people say like, that wasn't my intention. I'm sorry about the impact, but let's be mindful of both. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia, for keeping us accountable, as this is a space for you and for all of you to make this decision. So thank you. I want to appreciate that. Jocelyn?
Yes, thank you. I just kind of want to also piggyback on America and Cynthia to the points that they just expressed, and it leads me into what I wanted to share is organization. We need organization because for all of the points that America and Cynthia brought up, that really falls back to the foundation of organization so that we're able to be more effective.
Okay, great. Mariana?
Sí, yo creo que los acuerdos comunitarios debemos de pensar en que cada persona, ¿verdad? Tenga un límite, casi la mayoría nos dan 2 minutos para hablar, ¿verdad? Y que respetemos nosotros también a las demás personas su tiempo, ¿sí? Porque somos muchos donde podemos, ¿verdad? A mí me gusta mucho hablar, pero si me dan 2 minutos voy a respetar. Entonces, yo creo que respetemos nuestro tiempo que nos dan, ¿sí? Y si hay más tiempo después, que respeten para después. Entonces, también, ¿verdad? Que nos respetemos unos a los otros, ¿sí? Y también al momento que que haya interpretación, ¿verdad? Que sean interpretados nuestras oraciones, nuestros temas, ¿verdad? Tanto en inglés como en el español, porque a veces hablan bien rápido y no entiende la intérprete, entonces no puede interpretarme igual al inglés. Gracias.
Okay, sí. Oh, sorry. Yes, that's I hear a lot of affirming for, concise timekeeping or keeping us accountable to the times that we set. So, and part of that is being efficient. So that's great. And we have 1 more minute. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? I would love to hear from other folks who haven't gotten to speak yet. Someone else? Jasmine?
Couldn't unmute myself. I'm sorry, I missed part of this. I was on my phone making dinner and everything. So are we just saying like what do we hope to get from our time together, or?
Well, we're trying to outline what community agreements we'd like to see and what we'd like the decision-making process to look like in this group.
I echo, like just keeping people like on, like don't let people, run on tangents because and we're such a large group. Like, I'm just wondering, do we really need to introduce ourselves at every meeting? Can we just like put our names in the chat box? I feel like there's so much work to do and we've spent so much time just on introductions. We're such a large group, it just takes up a lot of time. I'm hoping there's like an easier way that we can do that.
Yeah, we really appreciate that kind of feedback because we're also trying to, make sure this is the best use of everyone's time and value your input. So thank you for that. And I'm sure I think we're going to share some kind of forum where you can give us that feedback too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jasmine, Gabby, and everyone. We heard such great information about what's important to folks, and what we're going to do is compile all that into one document and send it out in advance of the next meeting so that we can vote on it, because we need to respect that people are very different, right? And so there are some things important to us that may not, maybe in somewhat conflict with something that's important to someone else. And it's important to come to these agreements collectively and democratically. And so now moving on, oh, I see 2 hands raised. Marina, is there something you wanna say before we move into discussing the co-chairs?
No, ya no había bajado la mano. Está bien.
Oh, no worries. Okay. So Gabby, can we share the slide 25? Lou Jane is going to talk about roles, responsibilities of the co-chairs.
Great, thank you so much, Margareta. So this discussion is really important as we think about the roles and responsibilities and what we want to see in the co-chairs. And so as I discussed in the last meeting, we're collectively, you all are going to choose 2 to 3 co-chairs to serve as leaders for the steering committee, and that some of the responsibilities that are in these circles are 1 to 2 orientation meetings with Air District and CBE staff, and then presiding over the steering committee meetings. So this will be a facilitation, supporting with developing presentations, and then meeting multiple times per month with the Air Districts and CBE staff to prepare for these meetings. And then finally providing direction for the Air District and CBE to develop the community emissions reduction plan. And so I wanted to make sure to cover these responsibilities, and then we'll be talking about in small groups again, other responsibilities that you all would want to see the co-chairs to have. And then a side note too is that this has been a question that's come up, that there's an additional stipend of $75 per hour to compensate for the co-chair's participation. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Margareta to talk about some of the criteria that you all would be looking for in a co-chair.
Thank you, Lou Jane. Before we do, I see Miss Margaret's hand up.
Oh, yes, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, Miss Margaret, go ahead.
We can't hear you right now, Miss Margaret.
You have me muted.
Sorry about that. We can hear you now.
All right, thank you. I was going to say, there's a step that you missed in governance. You haven't designed or created what kind of governance you want. Voting, having a vote, doing voting right now, does that set your criteria how you gonna be implicating or developing outcomes for meetings? So you haven't, I haven't been part of or heard of how y'all are structuring your governance. So do people because as of right now, there's 3 forms of governance for AB 617 sites. West Oakland works from a consensus model. Richmond is working from the Brown Act. Brawley, California, Community of Seco is working from the Brown Act. So so I'm just saying, before you start using the word vote, you need to get a methodology. Whereas that, what kind of governance you are going to use throughout this process. If you're using Robert Rules of Order, y'all need to be specific right now. But just jumping up and saying having a vote, that go later on down the line, when you get really technical and details, if you don't have your governance structure together, it's going to be problematic. So voting is could add on to that problem. So to me, based on my experience, y'all need to have a governance structure of the yay and nay of how you operate when it comes down to decision making.
Thank you, Miss Margaret. Yeah, you raise a really important, question about what is our governance model? Are we consensus? From my understanding, and we can definitely have a discussion about this in the small groups, is that we are consensus based, and so we won't necessarily right now in this meeting be voting for the co-chairs, but we'll be talking about the criteria of what everyone wants to see in their co-chairs, and talking about how they'll be elected. And I'll pass it to Margaret too to share her response as well.
Yep, and I think Miss Margaret, you and EIP have really laid a lot of foundation for other communities in the state around this issue of governance, and also shared governance with government. I agree with Lou Jane that looking at a consensus model right now, because we want to have co-chairs come in to help guide a deeper process to make sure that the governance structures are in place. And I'm wondering, when we go into small group to talk about the co-chairs, if we can also see if everyone is comfortable with a consensus model regarding the future vote for co-chairs, or how would people like to see that operate?
But Margaret, you also haven't done a tutorial to your steering committee to which one they want to embrace.
Yes, you're right. And to share with people the different models, and this is something we went through with West Oakland with the train station partnership board.
Back in the day,
and that took several months, as you recall, right?
But your people got to have that. That part of democratization. Yeah. Part of democracy is they got to choose which one it gives them what they want.
Yep. I agree with you, but I also want to respect that this effort is being co-led by CBE and BACMed, and want to make sure, we're here to support folks, right? And I see Kita's hand up.
Thank you, everybody, for the comments so far. Thanks, Ms. Margaret, for always bringing up crucial topics. If I on CBE and BACMed's end, it seems like I admit we did not mention that enough yet in this process. I'm a new staff to CBE yet. When I came on, hired for the AB 617 process, and as an East Oakland advocate for money to actually come to East Oakland, CBE did hold 3. We do need to come, and once we get the co-chairs, we do plan to have you all weigh in and say what we have to do. But from my understanding, BACMed, let me know if I'm wrong, coming into this process, I came in when CBE was trying to figure out the charter so much, and not like CBE was trying to figure it out, but they heard from the community. They did hold 3 workshops within East Oakland amongst different groups and organizations and individuals that had went to different BACMed meetings to advocate for this funding. They did do a few community workshops, and from those workshops, we had heard that a hybrid model was more based on some of the constraints of the Brown Act, and based off some of the practices from the other processes in terms of time and such. A hybrid model was the most of interest of folks. And so that's kind of where we landed for a temporary hybrid process until we onboard co-chairs to solidify exactly what you all want to do. But I just want to give a little context that it's a hybrid between voting consistent. So the hybrid is, like Ms. Margaret said, is Brown Act and consistent. Brown Act comes with a lot of other, more than voting. Brown Act comes with other type of meeting decorum or whatnot that you have to do. had to be public. It has some certain stuff had to be posted before 48 hours. There's a lot more to do with the Brown Act opposed to consensus voting. And so in those trainings, CBE did break it down, and we need to bring that training back, I would say, for this particular group now that we have the steering committee and move forward. But I just want to provide context that we're all right here in how we move forward.
That's really important foundational information. Thank you for that, Keita. And I'm wondering just if you are able to say more about, let's take this immediate example of the selection of the co-chairs that we're proposing occurs at the next meeting. When you say a hybrid model around voting, so everyone who's on the steering committee will have one vote, right? And then what? Can you take it from there?
Sorry, Margaret, say the last part again. You said each committee.
So
before I do that, sorry, can we go to Charles? He has.
Oh yes, of course. I'm sorry, Charles, please.
No, I was just really focused on making sure that we have our leadership in place and that we are brought up to speed per se as to the work that was done before with CBE and BACMA, because without having the community members inside those rooms listening to what's going on, everything seems top heavy. Like all the decisions are being made already, and the community is coming in on the back end, trying to see where they fit in at. And the community shouldn't be worried about where we fit in at, because we should be there at the table all the time. So that's what my statement was.
Cool, definitely, and I so definitely agree. Again, coming into this process, that was CBE has pushed back a lot on the process for me coming in. Again, the state, BACMed, CARB, whoever, this money is attached to the funding, which often traditionally comes with timelines and deadlines and such. So CBE has actually pushed back a lot on some of the timelines and rush from the top down and whatnot to make this more community oriented. Another CBE staff that's been here a little bit longer before me, feel free to step up. Yet CBE was not at all trying to choose, nor BACMed, definitely not trying to choose anything for folks. What CBE, from what I understand from coming on, CBE was trying to kind of do some pre-homework, learning from the previous processes, which best practices and just time or whatnot, and learning from where some of those time constraints came from, and it wasn't always from building trust. Sometimes it was actual processes that just kind of take a while. And for some, that's cool. If that's what you want to create, if you feel like that's the kind of constraints you need for more transparency and stuff, so be it. But there's also other processes where you can create, when you can have that same transparency, but less constraints around some things and create the community transparency that you want. And so at the end of the day, we do want you all, yes, to do it. We just had to have something to at least go with. And again, I'm sorry if I miss speaking on anything, but this is just me coming in, also new East Oakland member that advocated for this funding. And so I attended those and just so happened to be here as well. But bottom line is we did a misstep on not rehabbing that meeting here, and that's the next step or the next meeting or such. Yet you yourself, Charles, from the first meeting, we've been hearing a lot of push for leadership. So we have to have something in our interim. So we have to lightweight subscribe something, or you guys come here right now and we're asking you right now to come to a consensus and how do you want to vote. But to some extent, nothing was together yet. So we had to do something. So these first two meetings is us just building the blocks, and we're trying to build it to where that you all can take it over and run with it. And trust me, I'm one of the main ones trying to make sure that you're doing that. So, but apologies that we did do a misstep. If it seemed like you were missing some information, you're not missing that. That's probably about the only information within this process that I feel like we didn't do our diligence in mentioning. or whatnot. Is because, yeah, it's a rush. Some folks want to build trust and go slow. Some folks are ready to get into it and do action. And we're trying to find this balance and make sure that is yours. No excuses. That's just my perspective and my opinion.
That's right, Kita. And you know, there's a lot of diversity, and you're holding, and CB and BACMed are trying to honor the diversity of opinions and voices. Let's hear from Carol and then Charles. And then I feel like we do need to move into a process so we can move into the next step. Please, Carol.
Yeah, I want to say thanks to Kita. You actually said just what I was thinking. I feel like that everybody, there's so many different ranges of where people are with this. And I think, you know, we got some people who are like, you know, what's the structure going to be? Let's move into the structure. Other people are like, wait, I don't even know who all these organizations are. So I think it would be helpful if we can get more information, or where can we go to actually find out. And I like the couple slides that you all showed, but you just showed them briefly to say, like, you know, who all the different sort of players are. I mean, that would be helpful to, I think, help orientate everybody a little bit better so that we can all get on the same page. And then I'll just say my concern too is on for the people who are not English as a first language who are part of this. You know, we need to make sure they're up to speed too, and up there with us. So I think that if people who already have an idea of where we should go with the structure, if they could just kind of hold for a minute and let everybody else catch their breath, and then let everybody else kind of catch up to that line, I think that we'd be in a good place. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Carol. We have Charles and Marina.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that to cast any shade on the process. I was speaking to community members, so that community members that haven't been a part of this process understand their own personal power in this process, that they do have a voice, they do have an opinion, and that they should be on this stage voicing that opinion right now if they have anything to say, because sometimes we just get into something and we so afraid of offending people that we won't speak our truth. And we should feel free to speak our truth here with respect to people. And so I was saying this with respect to our community members. This is what I learned that we deserve. And so I want you to know ahead of time, this is how the fight should always be. That community should be community led. And so like I said, it wasn't nothing casting shade on the process. It's letting our people know that they have a voice in this, and they should speak it. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. Thank you very much, Charles. Marina, let's hear from you.
Yo lo que quiero decir, ¿verdad? Que primeramente tenemos que desarrollar, ¿verdad? El proceso, cómo vamos a trabajar, ¿verdad? En nuestras comunidades, ¿verdad? Yo les puedo decir, ¿verdad? Yo de hace muchos años, sí me abrió las puertas para trabajar como una miembro de mi comunidad, y hemos peleado mucho, ¿verdad? Bueno, no peleado mucho, sino que hemos dicho, ¿verdad? Al medio, a los del aire, ¿verdad? Que nos den fondos, porque nuestra comunidad, para ser limpia, necesita fondos. Nosotros como líderes necesitamos salir a las calles, a hacer estudios, ¿verdad? Estuvimos haciendo estudios, ¿verdad? Con unas cubetas, caminando en la calle, verificando qué carros pasaban, ¿verdad? Usamos una máquina para detectar los químicos más pequeños. En mi casa pusimos una como computadora por 2 años para que detectara el humo de los trailers del freeway, porque yo vivo cerca del 880. Entonces, todo esto debemos primero de organizarlo para para programarnos cómo vamos a trabajar en el este de Oakland, ¿verdad? Que es la ciudad más contaminada, y también agarrar fondos para nuestras líderes, porque las líderes tienen que trabajar bien duro. Hay que tocar puertas, ¿sí? Hablar con la comunidad, que vean qué es lo que estamos haciendo, ¿verdad? Queremos nuestro aire limpio para todos los niños, ya que tenemos alergias, ¿verdad? Enfermedades. Entonces, debemos de tener un proceso, ¿verdad? Desarrollándose primero y después ya continuar con lo demás, porque no es, hablarlo es bien fácil, pero hacerlo ya es otra cosa diferente. Entonces, hay que, hay que planear nuestro proceso, cómo vamos a trabajar con nuestras comunidades, y también los fondos, que estén dispuestos los fondos, que el Estado nos los dé, ¿verdad? Para trabajar. Gracias.
Great, thank you very much, Marina. So you all, we have about 15 minutes remaining of this meeting. To Miss Margaret's point, I think it's really foundational for us to figure out how we're making decisions regarding voting for who's the co-chair, right? That's foundational, figuring out what are additional roles. So and then what is the criteria for the co-chairs? Otherwise, people may not know, like, what are we voting for, right? So there's three very important foundational pieces. We're not going to be able to cover all three in the remaining time. And I'm wondering if we could, because there's so many folks and we need to make sure we have, as we hear from as many people as possible on these three topics, to go into small group. Let's hear from folks in the next 10 minutes, first on how you want to vote and make decisions right now just on the co-chairs. Is it majority rules? You know, is it who gets the most, say there's 2 or 3 positions, whoever gets the most votes, you know, how many votes do each people get? All those things I think need to get figured out before the next meeting, if there is a strong desire to vote next meeting, right? So does that make sense for everyone to go into small group breakout to have that conversation? So first, how many co-chairs are being proposed?
So originally it was 2, just because 2, but one of the steering committee members proposed that it be a third designated for youth, which we like that idea. So it's 3 with a designated youth spot. So a third is only for youth. Not only, but like the third, we don't want like 3 adults. We want to make sure that there's space.
So is the thinking that every steering committee member would have 3 votes? So can someone explain more about the proposal?
I actually brought it up. The 3 steering committee members. We felt after talking to a bunch of youth that they wouldn't really feel compelled to participate without knowing that they actually have a stake in this. And so it just made sense to have 2 adults and 1 youth, one designated youth member, so that we would always be able to have fresh minds in the mix of this.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Charles. So my question is, there's 25 or so steering committee members. Does each steering committee member, if you're proposing 3 co-chairs, each person has 3 votes. So I'm just trying to help people understand what the proposed process is around voting.
But the proposed, Margaret, excuse me, the proposed process is just for this item. You cannot carry it. You can't carry this action. You can't carry this action to other proposed democracy of decision making. You got to be much more clear. Yes, for this item, but you still haven't gave a tutorial, orientation, or education on the other models of governance.
That's right. I agree with you, Miss Margaret. And I think we're dealing with some community demands around hurrying up and getting to the co-chairs.
Oh.
So Kita, please.
My bad, I didn't know I was off of mute. But yes, we were trying to prioritize some of the leadership per the request of the group. But yes, still being mindful that we want to make sure that everyone, as it was mentioned, is up to speed. So yeah, just giving pretext for this process. Margaret.
So I'm sorry, I had the earlier question. So it's the thinking that if there are 3 co-chairs, that every steering committee member would have
3 votes.
3
just for
votes.
this process.
Okay.
For the co-chair.
Okay.
So that we can call in leadership and you can start telling us how you want to have the governance.
And then who gets selected? Is it the 3 people, the 2 adults with the most votes, and the youth who's under 25 with the most vote? Is that the thinking around?
Top 3 votes, one has to be a youth, yes.
Okay.
So top 3 votes, and we'll have to find a youth in that.
Okay. So is everyone clear on what Kita just laid out as the proposal?
And it's a proposal. Y'all can reject it.
Right.
Based on everything that you heard here.
That's right. And we'll go into breakout group to be able to hear from everybody, right? Andrea, do you have a question? Andrea, I'm sorry.
I would just propose that we have 2 votes, 1 vote for the adult and 1 vote for the youth. And then, the top 2 with the most adult votes. And then the top youth with the votes, only because some people, I think they should really focus on who they're really choosing. Having 2 votes, I don't know, I feel it could kind of mess things up.
I like that proposal.
Okay, so we have 2 proposals for people to go into small group to discuss. So one was the original proposal of 3, each person having 3 votes, 2 adults, 1 youth. The second idea was just 2 votes for each person, 1 adult, 1 youth. So can we go into breakout group for 7 minutes? So giving people more of a chance to talk. Great. Thank you, Gabby.
Oh, just to clarify, are we talking about the criteria or the voting?
I think we have to figure out the voting right now, and I think we can get to the other questions through other means.
Got it. I'm just trying to follow. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
¿A dónde me quedo yo?
Usted se queda aquí, or you can stay here.
Okay.
Okay. So I think this is our group. So does anyone have any thoughts about the proposals or any reactions, immediate or otherwise, any questions? We can raise some hands and I'll be happy to pick on folks.
What do you guys feel qualifies as a good co-chair first?
That's a great question. We can start with that too. Yeah. What would you like to see in a co-chair? What kind of, oh, sorry, Margareta.
So I think there's a way to hear from people throughout this process, like in between the meetings. We can send out an email, Google survey around both like co-chair responsibilities and criteria. It feels like we kind of need to make a decision today about the voting. If people won't be able to take a vote at the next meeting. So I'm wondering if we could maybe focus on making a decision in small group around that issue around voting.
Cynthia?
Something I was thinking, if there were still 6 people interested, as it indicated in the chat, and we had some sort of like list with like information on their qualifications, their interests, their statements, I don't know, whatever that looks like, maybe we would just like vote on our top 2, and then whatever comes out of that would be the co-chairs. I don't know if that aligns with your 1 and 2 option, but just wanting to put, yeah.
And that's right. And we were also thinking people could have at next meeting 2 minutes to just speak, right? So that they can, it's nicer to hear from people directly than just through paper. But so this question of, originally the organizers wanted to give all the steering committee members 3 votes, 2 adults, 1 youth. Then we had an alternative idea of just 2 votes, pick 1 adult, pick 1 youth. And so I think we're trying to figure out which one makes the most sense for you all.
So can I start for the sake of time? I think
Yes,
it should
please.
be 2 adults and 1 youth.
Okay. So maybe we can get a show of hand of who supports 2 adults and 1 youth.
Sorry, does that mean 3 votes?
3 votes.
I thought we were asking about how many votes?
Yes, 3 votes. So can we just get a show of hand? One, 2, 3. Gabby, are you taking hands?
Yeah.
So how many hands is that?
I noted 5.
Okay, great. And then the other proposal was just 2 votes. And it's fine, you don't have to vote if you don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. So how many for 1 person?
For 2 votes.
For 2 votes. Okay, and we have Marina's hand up.
Okay.
Marina?
Para los 3, para el joven también.
Oh, she had for 3 votes. Okay.
Great.
I got her hand. She's 5.
She's 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So I think we need to go back, bring everyone back, Gabby, into large groups so we can see what everyone else wanted to do.
Okay. I call everybody back.
Okay.
I accidentally left my breakout room when they were in the middle of asking me a question. They were like, "Do you want to be in a co-chair?" I was like, "No," and then I accidentally hit the thing, so it looked like I was just like, "No," hang up the phone.
Gotta love.
And Miss Margaret was asking me, "Well, do you want to be?" And I'm like, "No," click. So I think I'm gonna hear about it.
Yeah, I think we all know, have been in that position, Carol, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. There are Zoom polls. So great. So let's hear from the facilitators of each small group what the consensus or the voting for your group. And I can just get started with ours. So we had 6 people who weighed in. Five of them wanted 3 votes for each steering committee member, and 1 person wanted 2 votes. So let's hear from the other groups.
In our group, we have 4 steering committee members. And 1 person explicitly said 3 votes. And so it seems like it was no opposition or other strong. The only other strong point was that they don't want to have to vote again. Whatever the process is, make sure that it's solid so that it's not no runoff to where something happens and another vote has to take place.
Okay. So no like ranked choice voting, is that what people?
That's not funny. That's not funny.
What I was thinking about is that ranked choice voting. It gets messy.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah,
funny.
I'm sorry, Charles, that I shouldn't, I know that it's very controversial. Sorry for bringing that up. Let's hear from the other groups.
I can go next. For our group, we had 4 CSC members, and 3 of them were cool with the 3 votes. 1 of them had no preference, but we did have a question. There was an acknowledgement that there aren't as many youth steering committee members, and so wanting to know how that voting process would take place, if there's only 1 currently or 2, and if there was an opportunity to recruit more youth before the voting process. And so wanting to know more how that's going to work.
Or to keep that youth position open, because you don't want to rush the process, you know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's Keita?
I was just gonna add, like I told my group, we don't want to rush the process. We did. Shout out to Michaela Patton. She was actually on the CBE team helping us with some of that youth outreach as a youth herself in this process. And we did a lot of thinking about how to get youth involved in this group, and even thought about having an extra youth ad hoc group, all kind of stuff. We just didn't get as much interest in it. But for now, CBE does have an EJ youth group that we are heavily talking, keeping them in embrace with the AB 617 process. And we'll continue to try to find more youth that want to actually be on the board. But honestly, a lot of them wasn't interested in being on the board. They wanted to be on a separate committee that interfaces with this board and still be able to give input, FYI.
That's great. Thank you. That's a beautiful effort, Keita. So let's hear from the 4th group.
Hey, Margaret, I was in, I believe, the final group, and we actually didn't get to discuss the question around the voting style, but we did identify who in the room were voting members on the steering committee, and then from there identified which folks would be interested in nomination for the co-chair process.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carissa. So we're over time, but I'm wondering if folks who can stay for 5 more minutes, because we need to get some agreements on how we're going to move from here to the capacity to take a vote on co-chairs at our next meeting in November. So first, around the voting style, it seems like the vast majority of people who have weighed in want to have 3 votes instead of 2. So we'll move forward with that. Number 2, there's still 2 remaining sets of questions. We threw out initial roles, but we haven't had a chance to hear from everybody about additional roles. And that's very important. What is the job of that co-chair? How can anyone nominate someone or themselves if it's not clear what your job is, right? So we need to get solid on that question. The second question is, so given what the job is, what kind of person is equipped to do that well, right? And so these are, from my perspective, foundational, fundamental questions that need to get answered as a group. So we have whoever gets selected feels like they're on solid ground, that we had a good process for that, right? And that there's not going to be questioning their credibility and the integrity of the process itself. So here's a thought I wanted to throw out to folks, that in order to try to meet the demand of getting to a vote by the next meeting, that we provide these 2 questions around roles and responsibilities as well as criteria. Well, first, I would start with getting clear on the role. What is the job? And maybe hearing from everyone in the interim through email, through a Google survey. So we're getting clear on what the job is first. Then we throw out another survey. Here's what got decided online around the job. What do you think are the necessary qualities of someone to do that job well? And so we're polling people on both questions before the meeting in November. And then we take that to a final decision in November before we hear from, I don't know, it's a little, to Miss Margaret's point, we're trying to do something that needs some time in this very condensed way. Charles, I see your hand up. You want to help me out here?
I would love to help you out. And all I was going to say is this. There were 7 people whose names came up. Why can't they just send in what they feel is their qualifications to fulfill the job, and those qualifications that they send in themselves can just be circulated around the rest of the steering committee. So at least they'll have an idea of who everybody is that they would be voting for before any kind of vote happens.
So thank you for that idea, Charles. And can I ask you a question back?
Yes.
Do you think all the people who nominated themselves are clear on what the job is?
But you said you was going to send that out. So I was,
yeah.
My bad. I was basing that on top of sending out the job description.
Yes, right.
And then, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So it sounds like you and I are on the same page around the process.
I hope we all are.
Okay. Democracy is messy, my friends. It's okay that we're not 100% all clear. We will get there. I see Andrea and Anna.
Hi, I don't want to take too much time, but I would want somebody that already understands what the job is. I don't want somebody that is just now finding out what their role would be, only because I feel like this person is going to have to be our leader. And, I don't want them to be, easily persuaded one way or the other. I want somebody that's not afraid of conflict and that just kind of has a top to bottom understanding of what's going on and what needs to be done and already has some visions around that. So I wouldn't want somebody to lead our group that is just now understanding what that role is.
Great, thank you. So that's a very important criteria that you just expressed. And Anna.
Thank you, Margareta and everybody. I just want to reflect what I think I'm hearing and get a confirmation from Margareta. And then for me, it's been hard to kind of understand who's the steering committee member and who's, you know, part of our broader community. So since I would love it if people could maybe use a thumbs up reaction or a reaction to say they're good with Margareta's proposal as the next step. So if you could bear with me, because it's 8:08. I think I heard the Air District, Just Cities, and CBE team is going to take all we've heard, including some of the roles and responsibilities as a proposal, send it out to the steering committee to review, and we'll figure out a way to get your feedback about that, the process, the roles and responsibilities, and what we've heard. And then we are going to bring that back to the next steering committee. Margareta, am I hearing correctly? Would you modify that?
Yes, and
Okay.
well, actually what I was proposing is to see if it's possible to get to some resolution around that first, so that we can be clear and present that information before the meeting, so people can have an opportunity to think about, is this the job I'm interested in doing? And then that the nomination can occur before the meeting. So that I'm trying to come up with something abbreviated to get us to a vote at the next meeting.
Thank you for clarifying. If the steering committee is okay, could we get some reactions about that as a next step?
Emily, can you hear me?
Yeah, Mrs. Celia, is that you?
Yes, it is. What I'm going to say is that once I find out more about what the co-host does, it's a possibility I may want to be a part of it. But I want to, first of all, get more understanding about it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. That's important, right? And we need to know what that job is.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll do that.
Okay. So look out for a lot of communications from CBE and BACMET staff before the next meeting. The next meeting has been already set, correct?
I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, November 10th.
November the 10th.
And then I'm going to turn it over to Lou Jane to close us out.
Okay, November the 10th.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Margareta, and thank you everyone just for all of your time and participation. And I know for future meetings, we want to make sure to end on time, and also to just make sure that all of your questions are answered, and that you feel that, you know, everything that you want to say, we all hear. And so if you could fill out, I'm going to put it in the chat. If you could fill out this feedback form, I'm going to put it in both English and Spanish.
Already did, Jane.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Diana. That would be great, just so we can improve this process, and, you know, make sure we have the best meetings that we can. And then as a reminder, the next meeting will take place on Thursday, November 10th, from the same time, 6 to 8 p.m. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a really great rest of your week. And again, also feel free to reach out if you have any questions in the meantime before we meet next month. Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take good care.
Thank you. See you next
you.
month.
Thank you. Mhm.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.